Hello, my name is LifeMasterAJ. I'm AJ Goldsby from Pensacola, Florida, and this is just going to be a short video to show a very famous game. It's between Nigel Short and Jan Timman. It's from Tilburg, Interpolis, 1991, and it's basically Short's famous king walk. The game starts out e4, e5, knight d5, d4, d6, knight f3, g6, bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b3, bishop g7, and now queen e2. That's a fairly modern variation. Um, the variation that was all the rage at that time was knight g5, e4, e6 rather, and then white plays f4. And it goes on from there. I remember several games. Love Albert used to practice the black side of this variation, and he lost a very famous game in the U.S. Championship one year. And I don't remember who his opponent was, but it was published in Chess Life in this line. But anyway, queen e2 is what Short played, and it's a tricky little line. Black plays knight c6, both sides castle. h3, that's to prevent a pin on the g4 square there. a5, a4, d takes c, d takes c, knight d4, that's to exchange all pieces. Knight takes, queen takes, and now this pawn here on e5 is under attack, so white plays the simple rook e1. Now black plays e6. That move is heavily criticized by some because it basically shuts in black's queen bishop, and that turns out to be a very big problem piece for black for the rest of this game. Knight d2, knight d5, knight f3, queen c5, queen e4, queen b4, bishop c4, and now black plays knight b6. The best move according to the computer, I've been running the computers just about all day. I also have a brand new Stockfish 10, Houdini 6, and several others. Right now I'm running Komodo 11.01 64-bit. I also have 11.2, but it's a beta version and it's not reliable. But this is a Komodo 11.1. It's a very good program. I paid for it. It's a very high rated program. And it says that the best move for white is basically either bishop to d3 or b3. One guy posted analysis online and basically claimed to be the refutation of b3, and it was based on all computer analysis. But anyway, white plays b3. I would personally give that a double exclam. Give it one exclamation point for bravery and the other exclamation point for basically being willing to accept double pawns long term. Normally, when you're a beginner, you're taught that double pawns are very, very bad, and that double pawns will basically kill you. And anyway, it's just amazing that that white can play that move and get double pawns and not pay the price. Knight takes c4, b takes c4, rook e8. You can see basically black's problem is that one bishop can't get out because of the pawn structure, the bishop on c8, and the dark squared bishop is restrained behind the pawn on e5. So that's basically his problem. Rook d1, queen c5, queen h4, b6, bishop e3 hitting the queen, queen c6, bishop h6, bishop h8. Now Short plays rook d8. He can't exchange here because obviously check here. If he takes, that's check. Queen e8, and that's a mate. That's just silly. No one would do that. So after 24 rook d8, black just plays bishop b7. And now white plays our rook at a1 to d1. And again, the same problem if he exchanges off on d8, he gets mated because his king cannot move. So bishop g7, and now the rook goes rook at 8 to d7, exclam. And now black plays rook f8, white plays bishop takes g7, king takes g7. Many authors, like starting with, Reinfeld, who was my teacher basically because I learned from his books, talk about how this black king is in terrible shape because all the dark squares near his king are, been compromised, and especially this f6 square, both the queen and the pawn attack this square. And black also can't get his pieces out because he can't challenge, over here. And also, too, taking this pawn here is very bad because rook takes c7 and the rook's doubling on the last rank, and then queen f6 and knight g5 and rook takes f7 and it's all over. So, or knight takes f7. So anyway, black's in very dire straits here. After king takes g7, white plays rook at 1 to d4. That's just to give an extra guard to this c4 pawn. Or ae8. White plays. Let's see. I'm sorry. Let's go back here a couple of moves. Queen f6. Check. It was 29. Queen f6. Check. King g8. Now we have the key move here. Now I do want to point out that all the engines show that knight h4 is the correct move here. Double exclam. And it's a very long analysis. I believe the idea is play king h2, f3, and then just walk up to king to f4, threatening to go to h6. And the whole idea of the knight being on h4 is if black ever plays h6 to stop the white king from reaching the h6 square, knight takes g6 is devastating. You can't take back because of queen takes pawn check. And if he doesn't take the knight, queen h8 will be mate if the knight's on the g6 square. But anyway, here Short played the move exclam h4, okay, which is a very strong move. I don't even think the computer realizes what's going on here. I remember analyzing with much older engines many years ago, and this game was played in 1991, and those engines back then had no clue of what was going on. Black plays h5. Basically, white's threat here, if he's allowed to, is simply to push his pawn all the way up. Just play h5, h6, and then it's a mate on g7 because black has no way of defending this square, and he can't put his king in the corner because the white queen hits that square. So the threat here is just to run this pawn up to h6, and it's a mating web. So black plays h5 here to stop that, and now Short plays king h2 double exclam. That white king is just going to walk, on these diagonals from here all the way down into h6. Rook c8. Now, I did want to point out that that move was actually a mistake. I actually found the line with the aid of the computer. I don't want to burden you with too much computer analysis simply because it'll take forever to do this video. But the correct move here was bishop c8. And knight g5 double exclam is the correct move. And now bishop takes d7. He doesn't take back the bishop, plays rook f4. And this is just insane. Doesn't even recapture he just dropped the whole rook basically. Queen c5, knight takes f7. Of course, now the threat is just simply queen to h8 mate, so black's got to take. Rook takes f7, queen takes f7 check, king h8, queen takes g6, queen takes e5. Now there was another line here, obviously, if simply queen e7 here, then rook f7 hitting the queen e7, just rook f7 there, hitting the black queen, and he's got to give up his queen to stop the mate. And then it's a very long endgame, but black should eventually lose simply because the queen is much better than the rook and the bishop in this position. But anyway, queen takes e5. g3, just defending the rook. Queen takes, check, check, doink. And there's the killer move there. That's the one that really finishes black off. King g6, rook takes d7. And basically that's a rook and pawn ending for well, the idea is to exchange off the rooks and get to a king and pawn ending. But obviously with this pass pawn, and this pawn back here, basically white's got almost a 3-pawn advantage here in this position. And, in any king and pawn end game, just show the pawns up the board. And that's just an easily won game. It's not even worth looking at. Anyway, in this game, black played rook c8. Like I said, that was a mistake. Putting the rook on c8, bishop c8 was a much more competitive move, and that would have prevented the king walk, and it would have been in game. And maybe this game, if that had been played, this game would not have been as well known. I think also too Short was a little bit short of time at this point, if I remember correctly. He was always a very slow player, but he played this game exceedingly slow, like he was having problems making, finding the correct moves. But anyway, rook c8, king g3 double exclam, or c8, king f4 exclam. Obviously, the idea is to put the king here on h6, bishop c8, hitting the rook, and normally times you'd stop and save your rook. You back your rook up, and, play something like rook d8. But here white doesn't even do that. He just goes king g5, and here basically black resigned because if bishop takes rook, then just simply, king h6 is an easy win for white. And, because there's no defense to the checkmate on this square. But anyway, that concludes my video. It's a very famous game. It's called, Short's Magnificent King Walk. And it's one of the most amazing and fantastic king walks of all time. But that concludes my video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.